White Cube.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the White Cube podcast. My name is Gabrielle De La Puente.
And I'm Zarina Mohammed.
And on today's episode, we're going to be doing something new, a little different. We realised that we started the White Cube podcast years into the White Cube. So anyone listening to the podcast might not realise that we have like buckets of texts that you've not heard before. So we're going to start a new series. We are going to be revisiting some of our older, spicier texts and reading them out, but then also having a little discussion.
Yeah.
And reflecting on, like, I don't know, do we still agree with what we said?
How do we feel about it?
Would we say anything differently?
Do we have anything to add?
And how was the response to that text at that time?
Gossip, context. It's going to be an extended Throwback Tuesday with the director's cut is what we're doing.
The director's cut.
I'm excited.
So the first episode is going to be a text that I wrote called Why Museums Are Bad Vibes. I published it on the 17th of November 2019, and it was actually one of maybe the final text I wrote about art, a bit of a goodbye when I had simply had enough. I'll read it out and then we will get to the discussion. Okay. It's very short. A quick rant, if I might, because I actually can't bear going to museums anymore. So much is getting in the way of me having a good time. I'm like, nah, museums are bad vibes. It's just old stuff in rooms. What's the big deal? I hear readers of a certain look droning at me through the internet. With most UK institutions, it's calm to start with. I think, cool, this is government funded. It's ours. And that's what gets me over the threshold to see the culture things inside. But on entering, that nice image is replaced with busybody staff excited to police the bags and behaviours of anyone, asterisk, who's braved their way in. And then in brackets it says, by anyone, I mean anyone but the Ruths of the world. God forbid you answer a phone call in a museum. Cafes are expensive. There's nowhere to rest before or after the whole slog, not enough seating in general. And while the building might be accessible, many exhibitions aren't. Recycled air is gross, and the temperature never makes sense for the time of year. And that's just visitor experience. When we get to the art, permanent collections, the stuff on the walls that never changes, are boring. I don't want to see old paintings of people I don't know, B-side abstract art, and a shitload of boats. Permanent collections have to be free because they are bad, but please free yourself of their permanence and get a new energy, I beg. Ticketed shows are never reasonably priced, and these big blockbuster exhibitions advertised on public transport just show the same people, things, and conservative ideas on rotation. Bad and stagnant like Tory chat. Why are we brainwashed to think we have to go whispering around these exhibitions in order to keep our finger on the pulse, when what pulse does Andy Warhol even have? He's been dead for time. I'm over going to museums to look at important things that don't align with what I really enjoy. I can't with shuffling from cabinet to cabinet, pretending to read the captions. I should have stayed at home. Daytime TV is more engaging. This text is a moment to punctuate, release, and to explain where I'm at. I'm not sorry for the knowledge that stops me enjoying the museum experience. I'm grateful to be here distrusting their activity. So much is stolen colonial property that museum directors now feel is their legacy to keep holding on to. Mad. So much is art acquired by people back in the day who made their money off the slave trade and other exploits. Even art that's arrived from other people's collections makes me feel iffy because, wow, shouldn't we be grateful the billionaires have let us spend time with their belongings? Ooh. Contemporary artists whose work is involved in these processes don't get rental fees / royalties like musicians and authors. The work acquires value without them, and the people who benefit most from that rising value are, of course, the billionaire club collectors. I can't go to museums without thinking about money, the white powers that be, and the wider working environment. You know, they exploit volunteers, use 0-hour contracts, don't look after public-facing staff who are on the front line for an absurd amount of abuse, and generally only hire marginalised identities in the gift shop, kitchen, security, and cleaning teams. Be careful mentioning unionising. These are the bad vibes I'm talking about. Oh, it's so nice you have an educational wing. Oh wait, the opioid crisis causing Sackler family paid for it. Get to fuck. White Illuminati curatorial departments of Alistairs and Susans and their boring personalities only curate whiteness because that's all they recognise as being qualified for exhibition status. An aesthetic, quote, constructed to justify and perpetuate colonialism, as Red Praxis tweets. BAME, LGBT, disabled and working class communities have wide, diverse, actual cultures that aren't seen as worthy of collections, and if they are subject, it's through the lens of the white middle class curators working out their own subjectivities on marginalised bodies, violently. I see you all programming public talks about diversifying the museum in order to buy yourselves more time. I want to ask, how long are you planning on keeping up the charade? I guess it's cheaper to throw a speaker fee at the problem instead of a full salary. Cheaper to pay an underrepresented creative 2 hours to run a workshop instead of commissioning them to do something substantial. There's an endemic right now of museums and galleries being made up with themselves for hiring a woman of colour, for example, as curator in residence or visiting curator or temporary maternity cover, and from all reports, reaping the good benefits of looking diverse, whilst treating that individual with no respect whatsoever because they are different. They can't really complain because we're hiring them, and they'll be gone soon anyway, so who cares? It's fucked through and through. Directors and curators, these problems aren't new to you. Critics, artists, visitors, and good staff raise them on the daily. So it's not that you can't change things for the better, it's that you simply choose not to, as these aren't problems for you because of who you are as people. Opaque, evasive, disinterested. You don't ask us what we want to see or how we want you to be because you don't care. The whole shape of the box and everything that's in it is just not conducive to the aesthetic experience I want to access from museums. I learn more from Twitter threads anyway, and I feel enough from video games to do without. Why would I give you my visitor number? I don't want to be seen near you. I want to stay away. I want to boycott, protest. It's the end of the decade, and I don't know how else to say this, but I'm done. Breaking up with museums, finito, my legs and eyes are closed. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, good night. And breathe. It's a good text.
That was good. Like, I don't mean to sound, I don't mean to sound surprised. Like, obviously it's good. You're like my favourite writer. But like, you know when you go to a concert and you're like, I love this one, track 7, or but like that's how I felt just now. Like I was at a concert and waving my arms, lighter in the air. Like that's a bop.
It's mad, isn't it? It's like if you've been following the White Pew for a long time, you might know. If not, you won't. Like, we wrote about art and only art for years. And then in 2019, I bought a Nintendo Switch and I reviewed Breath of the Wild, the Zelda game. And I was like so blown away by it, and I'd forgotten how amazing games were, and I just thought, oh my god, like, I compared the experience of playing a video game like that to going to Tate Liverpool, and I just thought, this just doesn't compare. Like, I'm so over it. I'm not convinced, and I felt like playing a game for the first time in years just like broke the spell or something. Like, we've been art critics and we were starting to be like embedded in all these different galleries and museums, and I just thought like, oh my god, I just don't care. Like, I just don't care. And I've just remembered, and I can't believe I thought I did care, and I'm over it. So this text was like this moment where I was basically saying, I'm not writing about art anymore, I'm writing about games, and this is why. And I did. And I didn't know that then like a pandemic was going to happen and all those museums would be closed anyway, and the only thing I would have left was games. So like I was setting myself up very well by accident.
You might be psychic. Yeah.
I might be psychic. It's crazy. And now I haven't even read my old art texts because I've just been so done with it all, and reading this like reminds me why.
Well, now you've read it back with hindsight, distance, you're at arm's length from this text in terms of like time and also subject matter. How do you feel reading about it? Like reading about you writing about art?
I agree with myself. I think I like grew up loving to make art. I thought I was convinced I was going to be a painter, but I just always thought like art was the one, and then went to art school, was still really happy about making art. But I think like because you love making art, you expect yourself to love going to galleries and museums by default. And then I started to write about how I don't think I love going to galleries and museums, and like there's something confusing and strange about like the the white cube aesthetic and this like whole performance of going to a gallery. And like I eventually stopped making art to write about it instead, because I then realized like I just really enjoyed writing in as an art form. And I think this text is all of those years of confusion just like boiled down to one text. It's so short as well. Like we write things now that are like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 words, and this is so tiny. Like just because you like making art doesn't mean that museums are right. Like they're not right. None of it feels right. I was thinking about it now during a pandemic, like when things are starting to reopen again. Like I'm not excited to go to a museum. It's not something I've missed. And to go to one now would be such a strange experience because like it sounds so trite, but why would you put so many paintings in one room? Like it would be so overwhelming. It has in the past made me just dismiss all the stuff in there instead of taking any one thing seriously or spending a lot of like time or trying to have a connection with a painting or a sculpture, whatever it is. Like, why is there so much stuff packed in those rooms? Why is there not one thing per room so that you actually like look, that you actually see it, you actually think about it? I think going to a museum now would just be a joke, because I would be like, this is badly laid out. I don't know, stop it. Like this salon hang that people have been doing for like centuries, like just stop it.
It's not a good format.
Just whittle it down. I dare the National Gallery. Is that a museum? The National Gallery is a museum, isn't it? Oh my god, my brain.
Yeah.
I dare the National Gallery to just like put everything back in storage and just put like one thing in each room. And then change it, you know, like the next day. Change it the next day. And then just keep changing it.
That's a really good point. And you know what? I'm glad that you made that point, because that has never occurred to me. That's a brand new thought that you've just put. It's such a good point. That is such a good point, and I'll tell you why. Obviously, you know why. Because that salon format popped out in like what, the 1800s, Regency period, right? Back then when they were like doing things, they didn't have phones then, they didn't have laptops, people didn't put things on billboards. Yeah, you were like, if something life-changing happened, right, across the world, you'd find out about it in 2 to 3 years. You simply would not know if like you know, like it just, the news didn't happen. Images, if you saw a painting back in the 1800s, 1700s, you'd shit your pants because that's still witchcraft to you, you know? Like, that's bonkers, that's nuts. But now, I see about 5 million images a day and they're all horrifying. And like, I see too many. What I need is like isolation, sensory deprivation, and maybe like one really good image, you know? Like, just...
You need an edit. You need them to be editing this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, the issue is, if you go to the National Gallery or one of the many shit Tates, like, the stuff that's on the walls is there, and 5 years later you go back and it's still there.
Yeah.
And just change it up.
Can you imagine if they did? If they did change it every day, like there was a new painting, it'd be like a Supreme drop. People would be like losing their minds, going crazy. Like, which one is it
Be
today?
like, I need to go.
It's the Van Gogh.
I need to go and see, otherwise I'm going to miss it.
Yeah, people would book their train tickets to come down to London being like, it's my favourite painting, I've got to go experience this. It'd be such a moment. It'd be such...
Oh my God. It's not going to be there for another 2 years. Like, I need to see it on this Wednesday, the 5th of whatever. Like, I need to see it. Inject scarcity back into the picture.
More scarcity.
Make things special again.
Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. That's what the Tate needs. Tate Britain, if you're listening to this, Alex Farquharson, which you probably aren't, if we're completely honest.
You probably aren't.
But I hope you are.
But it's like, so there's the art sides of this. Like, I very much still agree. Like, I don't want to see portraits of people who I don't know on walls. The stuff in museums, like, it's not selling it to me. It's not making me want to, get there. And the stakes are higher now because since I wrote this, I've gone through COVID and I'm still going through long COVID, and like my health condition now means like getting to a museum would be pretty much impossible, and staying in a museum. So like whatever was there would have to be worth it for me to like crawl. Do you know what I mean? Like army crawl on the floor like a zombie to get to see this thing. Like it would really have to be good, and it would have to be worth the fatigue crash I had after it. Like it would all have to be worth it, and at the moment there is nothing worth it in any museum. And that's not to say like I'm someone who doesn't enjoy art. I'm just saying like I don't enjoy it presented in this way, in these buildings, inside organizations that are like so poisoned that it throws off the whole atmosphere. It's not the neutral space that I think they want to achieve. It's like this, the politics of these galleries are news headlines now. Like the way that they treat their workers, it's all transparent. We all know it. Things like the Barbican Stories project and protest, the staff have like, made instances of racism and discrimination like into a book, and they've shared that online, and that's not just one isolated instance. Like it's happening across the country and across the world through all these galleries. Like I'm done. Even more so now in 2022 compared to like when I wrote this in 2019. There's a lot more noise between like the visitor and the art object, because we know so much more now about the context.
I think that's a really astute point, or not astute point, that's a really eloquent, clean way of phrasing it. Like the noise between the gallery and the work itself and the visitor is just like, it's louder, because you're right, like museums and galleries both at the same time, like there's this assumption that they are a container, right? They're just like a see-through container that lets you see the work for what it is, but like in the best way possible, right? Like they're just an environment that they're like completely, like they don't really exist. You don't notice them. That's the theory, but like in practice they are like that. The politics leaks into what you're seeing in such an insidious and like palpable way if you're paying any kind of attention. Like it becomes the subject matter. And I think this is an interesting text for you to write as someone that loves art but hates institutions, because I think the parts that you identify that you hate are the institution. Like, you still really fundamentally love art in this text, I think, and like you're writing in defense of it. But this is like a speed run through every single problem.
A speedrun is an ironic way to put it. I think just in the sense that this is like a compact list of all the bad shit, there could be a compact list of all the good shit as well. A sister text about why museums work, why they're good. I couldn't write that because I don't believe it. And I just don't, I don't know. I'm not the person to do it. I think what's changed in our writing since then, or in my writing anyway, is like a want to find more of a rounded opinion in what I'm saying, and to allow other people's opinions to inform my texts. I think the white paper's always just been me writing or you writing, and at times it's suffered because of that. At times it's also flourished because of that reason too. But you know, there were people who really, really missed the museums and the gallery experience over the pandemic, especially. I wasn't one of them. But I wish I would have understood what people were missing. And if I were to write another text now, I think I would try to fold that in so that people felt a little bit more represented, or they felt like, you know, the tension between me and them in a clearer way, or like a less, so that I was like a less dominant writer. I would also then, if I did write a second text, have to include the people who are caught in that really in between knot of a relationship with museums, because just as there were people who didn't care about museums when they were closed during the pandemic, just as there were people who really, really missed them and were dying for them to be open again, there were all the workers who had to protest outside museums like Tate, South Bank Centre, Royal Academy, like just to name the London ones, in order to receive better treatment by their employers, who were the museums and galleries. They were all in a really, really difficult position because they needed real support financially and otherwise through a global pandemic. You know, many of them had probably chosen or aspired to work in creative spaces because they had a love for art, they loved making it or writing about it or reading about it or just curating whatever it is, and then to be faced with like a notoriously precarious industry treating you like this during a pandemic must have just, you know, either soured people's relationship with art or written it off completely. Just really challenging stuff. And I'm sure, you know, when there was talk in government and on news shows about whether or not like arts funding should even be a priority in this sense, like, of course you would want that, but at the same time it's all being sucked up by the big bosses in museums. It's not necessarily going to all of the staff in a fair, equitable way. It must have just been a head fuck. So like, that's the kind of stuff that would need to go into a text now after everything that's happened, because it's just a scandal. And you know, you've got to expect coming out of this for people who want jobs in this industry to like think twice about it and either go elsewhere or really look closely at the contracts they're given, and the places and the, you know, the experience of other staff who've been there for a long time. Like, is this a place that's going to really look after me or not? Because, you know, I just don't have high expectations, and all of that stuff would have to go into another text. It's just a fucking dodgy industry. I don't know if I'm explaining myself right. I'm just trying to think about how else I'd do it if I was to write about it now.
No, you are. I think, but I think that begs a follow-up question, which is, when you say in this text, one, when you were writing this, and two, now, do you think that they're bad vibes to like throw the whole museum away, or do you think they're bad vibes, can we please fix it?
As depressing as an answer as this is, I just think we've got to rip it up and start again. I just don't have faith, to be honest. Like, everyone loves to talk about change and loves to talk about diversing the curriculum and the institution and the program and fucking everything, and then none of it happens, or it happens in these like really sly, meaningless, quick one-off ways. I just think we have to start again. I don't have faith in the people in charge, and I don't have faith that the shape of these institutions even allows for change to take place, to be honest. Like, the FAF, the boards, the trustees, the ethics committees, I think it's locked in. I hate it. And I don't think it's fair that workers have to protest to try and get these tiny inches of changes to happen, if they're that lucky. No, rip it up and start again, and just actually make that, that one artwork in one room gallery that we've decided now is the way to go.
I really think that's a really good idea. I can't believe you just slapped it out there so cash. Like, you were so nonchalant about it. Like, that's such a good idea.
And I'll tell you what, art handlers would make so much money if they were having to change this artwork in this gallery every day.
Yeah.
Like, so much money.
But isn't that, like, the way it should be? Like, art handlers should make a lot of money because they're the ones lifting, putting it in place, like, doing the actual work, right?
In a way, it's true, because art handlers are, like, the only ones who get their hands dirty.
Yeah.
Even though they've got gloves on, so this saying doesn't really work here. But yeah, they'll put the curators out of a job. We'll just put the curators out of a job because we'll just, like, get some algorithm to randomize the list of artworks that we show as and when, and we'll just let it happen.
The museum version of Google's "I'm feeling lucky" button. Like,
that's the gallery of the future. That's really
that's
funny.
what it's called. I'm feeling lucky. You just turn up. What will it be? Will it be a Renaissance masterpiece? Will it be an abstract expressionist nightmare? You simply don't know until 9 a.m. And then you walk in, you find out. Yeah.
It's just because of the speed of it. There'd be no time to do all the faff. There's no time for faff.
Yeah.
So we just, on the day of, print off, like, business card-sized information press release bits with the name of the artwork and the artist on. And, like, maybe it's, like, a sticker as well. And you get to take it away with you.
This is...
Or, no, save on paper. You get scan a QR code on your way in, and you get a text with this information on. And
the sticker's the good...
Oh, no, okay. No, if you want a sticker, we can do stickers.
the best idea you've ever had, because that sticker then becomes like a little... Did you see the sunflowers when they came? I've got the fucking sunflower sticker on my water bottle, on the back of my phone, on my laptop.
No, listen. Sticker book. So
yeah,
you go every day, you get your magical sticker that you saw because you were there, you got it, and then you've got your Monet, you've got your Lubena, and you've complete the collection, and you've got it, and it's all algorithms, and it's magic. The future.
This is the best idea you've ever had. You've had some pretty banging ideas. You need to write a new text called "This one particular way that a museum could be a good vibe." A better title than that. You know what I mean? I'm really bad at naming text, but like that should be the vibe of the text. How to make museums have good vibes.
Our little pamphlet ideas for a new art world should have just been about this, because this is better. This is more fun.
That's it.
Like, I just really want a sticker book now. Maybe more than I want this gallery to exist. I just want a sticker book. And
yeah.
Okay, so you complete the stickers. We've incentivized gallery engagement. We've gamified it. What you get at the end, you've got to get some kind of prize for completion, something like really special. What is it?
I think you get entered into like a tombola or a raffle, right? Because think about it, there are a lot of people with time on their hands, like retirees. What are they doing? Exactly. If you said to them, you get into the sick prize, right? Like, they do it. So, I reckon you put them in a raffle, and the winner wins a holiday.
Yeah, I was going to say a cruise.
Yeah. But like a nice cruise, like a booze cruise, like bougie cruise.
Okay, but would it not have to be, like, art related, at least, in some way? I don't know.
How it could be an art cruise, like maybe you go on the boat and it's like themed. I think you should be able to go on a water slide of some kind if you go. Like, it should be just a really nice prize. All expenses paid trip to Paris.
With all the art handlers, because they worked so hard this year. They deserve a holiday.
This is the end of the podcast. That's it. Short, sharp, punchy. That's our idea. I think that's such a good idea. I have a question for you. Do you remember the reaction to this text?
I actually don't, to be honest. What happened?
Nothing. People agreed with you. When you told me, right, this is, sorry if that's underwhelming, but it was underwhelming for me because when we booked this in the calendar, recording this podcast with this text, I was like, we're going to spend all the time talking about the juicy controversy, like everyone's comments, like 2,000 comments, like people being like, no, fuck you, I hate museums, no one wanted to die on this hill. You even anticipated people dying on the hill, like, in this, for this text in defence of museums. Like, you say, I hear readers of a certain look droning on at me through the internet. No one did. And I think that's so telling. I think that says loads, because the people in the comments were just like, yeah, good point, well made. Do you understand how rare that is on the internet?
That's funny. It's really funny. No, of course I understand how rare that is on the internet, because we've posted so many reviews and had so many backlashes and stuff. I think this was very much in our era of writing, like, silly clickbait titles. If this text had been called Museums Are Bad Vibes, I don't think half as many people would have clicked on it. But because I'd said why museums are bad vibes, people are like, why? I want to know. And also, I want to disagree with that. So people click on it. The bad vibes bit as well makes me laugh, because it was around the time when I was working on a project with some men who kept who kept saying they wanted the exhibition space to be vibey. We wanted it to be vibey. And the word vibe was making me laugh so much. What are these people on about? Vibes.
It's 2019 when vibes re-entered public vocabulary as well.
Yeah, I think it was everywhere. And I don't think I'd use it now, like, in the same way, in a text title.
What would you say then? What would you rename it?
It would be something like Why Museums Are Broken. Something a bit sadder.
Good. That's not as good, though.
No, it's not as good. I don't know. It would suit the tone, though. Things were a little bit more careless in the past, and now it's just dire. In the interest of, like, having more well-rounded discussions and being nice grown-up critics, like, museums do serve a purpose for many people. They're great places to take kids in half-term, weekends, whatever.
We went to the Sex Museum in Prague.
We have been to the Sex Museum. I've also been to the Penis Museum in Iceland, which was an experience. And in the before times when I'd go on holiday, like, I would look up the museums and go to the museums straight away. Even, not just abroad, but in different places in the UK as well. And maybe it's just a case of, like, I could enjoy all those spaces as a kid and then as a foreigner because I'm ignorant to the goings-on. Because it is the goings-on that gets in the way of being able to enjoy the art sometimes. And, like, maybe we should only ever seek to go to museums in places where we are not familiar with the art scene.
That's a good point about how, like, it's better to go in a different country, I think, because then it's like... Well, for me, right, I spend a lot of my time, like, on the fly in London, just, like, bopping from one place to another. museums are warm. You don't have to pay to be there. At least in this country, you don't have to pay to be in like the main collection bit. There's like a free collection, and they're warm. They are. I was about to say comfortable, not really. But you can like there's normally a seating area. You can have a little sit down somewhere. You might have to fight someone for that seat at some point, but like I think that's like for me their number one contribution to society. The fact that they are public space especially in London, public space that you don't have to pay to be in is so rare.
But it's not public space though. It's not. It's I don't know. I don't think it counts.
But it technically should be. I think that's like something that you write about quite nicely in this text. The fact that like it should be better. You should be able to walk into these places and feel like a certain amount of ownership over them because they are publicly funded. It's ours. It's taxpayer money. Like they should serve the public. That's what their own kind of like justification for cultural funding. Like that's what their own like blurb says. Like they're there to provide culture as a form of public service, right? Or like a form of public value, like culture as publicly valuable thing. And like they're public space, they should be. They're not for all these other different reasons. And like, I imagine if you I imagine security guards might give you a hard time if you're like a certain type of person or like this happens to you out in wider society. Like it's not like a perfect neutral space. Like, the fact that they check your bags is a bit much because they're only checking some people's bags. Like that weird kind of chafing of like public space happened. But even when I'm like trying to figure out one good thing that museum, like one good vibe that they have, I'm like caveating it so heavily.
You're just saying that you like chairs. Do you know what I mean? you're just saying I like to be comfortable. To be honest, like what you were saying then, it was making me think that if I was to write this text now, it might not be a condensed list of like all the bad things, but it might be a more generative, productive text, like how museums could be better or something to that effect. To flip the mood of it a bit and try and suggest things instead of just criticising them. But then, as I say that, the times we have written texts where we've tried to be well-behaved critics that give you the answers, it's not like anything's ever been implemented, so never mind.
I mean, things like that, like when we give people the answers, when we do cheat sheets like that, like ideas for a new art world, the OG text, I kind of, even though I think no one does it, even though no one takes our ideas, I still think it's an interesting way to write because it helps me think about what I want from like an art space, and I think then that helps me if I'm able to like figure out what I want. It gives better shape to my grievances than just complaining,
Yeah.
Do you feel like that happened with this?
At the time, it wouldn't have been something that I would have thought about. It was just done. It was a breakup letter. I'm writing about games now. Bye. Now, I think I would think about these things and stop to think what worth there was in putting my ideas out there for free.
Gab, I give them all. I can't keep them in half the time.
I'm
the unsolicited opinion giver. That's our job. Giving unsolicited opinions.
Maybe it is. I get bitter though.
I can't stop myself.
If people don't want to be fixed, why would I tell them how to fix themselves?
I'm a heckler. I think I'm a difficult person because I love giving unsolicited opinions. Like I really do.
Well, okay. Let me frame this differently, and this can be the gossip at the end of the podcast for people who stuck it out. That every single time we have been hired directly by an organisation or by someone to give them criticism, it might be a big festival or a media-focused company in another country. Raised eyebrows. these places say, we want to hire you to look at us specifically and look at us up close because we want to get better. So please, here's some money, look at us, assess us. Every single time that has happened and we've given our criticism, everyone has kicked off about the criticism we've given. So it feels like a lose-lose situation. Like, it feels a little bit pointless, to be honest. We should probably just... probably shouldn't be thinking about this because either way, nothing happens. So I should just give it out. Give it out for free.
Well, no, I think they do go somewhere because people read the website. Like, people read the website. People have... They don't go to the top because people at the top are, like, way too invested in this way of working. I think when I asked you, should we, like, way back in this... earlier in this podcast episode, if you're still paying attention, I asked Gabrielle, should we fix the bad vibes or should we just, like, put the whole museum in the bin? And you were like, put the whole museum in the bin. When you said that, although I agree with you, part of me still felt like I'm like just a junk collector. I hate throwing things away. Like, I'll keep cool. I keep cool packaging that and I'll keep it for, like, longer than I need to. And when I throw it away, I'll feel really bad. Like, that's just me. But so even though I agree with you, I know that I would say the same thing. When you said that, I still felt like, oh, but, like, can't we have a go? But, like, you're right. Because even when they offer, like, they it's not an unsolicited opinion. They solicit us for our opinions. They say, we love what you do. And it's not like you don't know what you're getting with us. Like, we're going to come in and we're going to tell you our thoughts. And they're not going to be like, oh, you're doing such a good job. Unless you're actually doing a good job. In which case, like, you're probably going to be fine with hearing criticisms. But, yeah, even when they solicit opinions, there's always, like, the vague hope that someone's going to say, yeah, you're good, you're on track, like, all good. No one wants to actually hear ways to improve. As much as you say we really want to improve, when you actually are given examples and places that you can improve and reasons why that improvement is necessary and the ways that it could help, it just kind of, like, it triggers this defensiveness. And I think that's because this, like, system of, like, running a museum, there is, like, one particular way of doing it, right? Like, and it's the way that everyone does it, and that way of doing things is upheld by, like, professional standards, like ethical code, like an agreement that, like, everyone has the same kind of ethical code, like things like diversity and inclusion commitments, even like things like that inform the way museums run, like HR, that, like, the wider structure. When people talk about, like, structural inequalities, that's what they're talking about, right? Like, it can feel really abstract and, like, bizarre and, like, loosey-goosey, like hippie, like, oh my god, structures, what are they? But that's what it is. It's like like specifically hiring practices, right? The contracts you issue to people, that's the structure. Like, it's the nature of the relationships, like the things that are nailed down. And, like, the people that, like, spend their time within these structures, if they don't like it and they take it to whoever's in charge, I feel like that's, like, a personal affront. You're in charge of these things, whether you wrote those structures or not. Like, I think you spend so much time kind of, like, at the helm of these institutions, not to become, like, a museum director apologist, but, like, just to understand the psychology of it, because it baffles me. And I think you must get way too personally involved in, like, being the figurehead, or, like, being in charge, or, like, this being your job. I think there's way too much, like, involvement, basically. People aren't really able, when they're in that position at the top, to step back and be like, actually, objectively, this is not going well. Like, that must be, what else could it be?
Yeah.
Is this off topic?
No, I don't think it's off topic. I think it just speaks to too many cooks in the kitchen. And a recent example of this might be what's happening at the Whitworth in Manchester at the moment. Alistair Hudson has been forced out, question mark, because Manchester University have been listening to, like, a lobbyist group of Israeli lawyers. The Forensic Architecture's exhibition earlier this summer had a statement in it that showed support to Palestine. The statement was removed at one point, then it was put back, and a few months down the line, this has come out, this news story that Alistair's been asked to leave. this is what I mean about too many cooks. Like, the Whitworth is tied to the University of Manchester, who have a say in who's at the helm. And I'm sure, like, many visitors to the Whitworth don't quite realise that University of Manchester has so much of a hand in what happens in the space. And maybe that's true to other galleries as well. And I don't think that's necessarily something I picked up on in this Why Museums Are Bad Vibes text from 2019, because I don't know, I don't think I was as knowledgeable about that stuff, about how everything is linked. And if I was to write about it now, it would have to be mentioned. If funders have this much of a say in the culture that we see, or the culture we don't see, I think it needs to be spoken about more generally. And, we have quite a young audience of art students, and I think they need to be the ones thinking about this.
Especially more now, yeah.
I hope that when visitors are going into galleries and museums, they're looking at, like, the logos on the walls.
Even more specific than that, it's not just like the funders that have the logos, it's like the with thanks to, like, and then the, like on the exhibition wall, like supported by, and then a list of, like, donors. Even like that even becomes complicated when you, like, think about, like, on the subject of Alistair Hudson and, like, the UK Lawyers for Israel complaint and Manchester Uni, right? Like, on that subject, like, people have known about, like the Zabludovich collection, like, that, them as funders, problematic, like, outset as a funder, like, that, well, I suppose their logo would be on it, but, like, the Zabludovich collection wouldn't have a logo on it. Like, it just kind of, like, things like that fly under the radar. And, like, the Sackler family that you actually mentioned in the text, like, big donors with their big money, like, I think like, a huge part of the way that museums are so broken is because of the funding. And, like, it is way too many cooks. Like, the funding is, like, the most complicated part, and it's getting more and more complicated after, like, 10 years of Conservative government. Like, those consistent funding cuts are making, like, money way more complicated, and it's, like, tying museums up to have to do, like, kind of financial acrobatics and make deals with so many different people and, like, agree so many things, like, just get co-signed away, and it makes the work of actually serving the public a lot harder. And I think with Alistair Hudson, I think it's interesting to think about this text in, like, right now, because not only is it topical and, like, everyone wants to think about a topical thing, news, right? But I think this Conservative government, more than any other, is way more invested in the culture wars, right? And I hate the fact that I'm, like, even using that phrase, but that's their own language, right? Like, it's not just the Whitworth and Alistair Hudson. It's also, like, wasn't the National Trust, maybe last year or a couple of years ago, there was, like, a whole hoo-ha about the National Trust losing their NPO status because they, like, I think one of the houses that Churchill owned had done, like, a little thing about the historic, like, the history of, like, where the money came from, and it was, like, slavery, right? Like, of course, always. But, like, these historic houses that the National Trust own were, like, looking at the sources of, like, the money that, like, built them, and, like, also exploring and researching, like, the links with colonialism, like, all these other things. And I think they were just, Tory government does not like. No, none of that. You're going to lose your NPO status. And I think that's part of the structure that's broken, right? Like, that's part of it's also, like, ethics codes, like, HR, whatever, like, contracts. But it's also relationship to government. Like, the Arts Council is meant to be at arm's length from government. But yet somehow, like, if an institution's NPO status is being called into question, that's fucked. That's part of it being fucked. Because then government's imposing, like, a political agenda upon these museums that are meant to be neutral, and that say the reason why we're firing, like, Alistair Hudson whatsoever, like, whatever, like, or, maybe not with Alistair Hudson, but, like, the reason why you can't explore colonialism as, like, a thing that your house might be related to is because you're meant to be politically neutral. But, like, that's a political agenda. Whoever's listening to this, God bless you for following my really obvious trite thought that I'm telling you with, like, breathless excitement.
But the obvious thoughts are useful to share. That's what this text is. the Museums of Bad Vibes text, like, sometimes it's fine to just state the obvious and speak without nuance.
I think it's useful just to collect those thoughts, just so you can have them all in one text. I think like a compendium, a mic drop. That's what I think this text is. I think it's a mic drop, but also just like a list. Like, just here is it all in, like, here it all is in one neat package.
Sometimes I wish we had more of them to publish, and I don't write about art anymore. So I harass Serena instead to write them. To write the obvious things, but Serena does have a tendency to write really complex, interesting essays instead.
Do you know what it is? Because I think to write these kinds of texts where it's like, I'm not saying like the bare basics in like a derogatory way. I think no, but I think to like explain things simply, like you're taking all of these complex problems, right? You're explaining it really simply, understandably, and like manageably. That takes actual brain cells that I simply don't have. I think basically this is me saying, this is why I think you're cleverer than me. Like, because you've managed to do this. I can't write like this. I simply lack the brain power. This is why you should start writing about art again, so you can. It's gonna happen. I
don't want to though.
You start writing about art again? I'm gonna review Super Mario Galaxy.
Let's swap.
Yeah, let's swap.
Okay, well, thank you for listening to the first episode of this new series that we're going to do where we revisit old white pube texts. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to find out more about the things that we've written, please visit thewhitepube.com. If you want to go a step further and review or rate this podcast, we would be very, very grateful. We're in the midst of trying to find a podcast sponsor at the moment. So the higher rated we are, or like the higher up the charts on the podcasts we are, the easier that will be. If you want to go a step further than that, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. You can give £1 a month and it all just adds up, and that is our wage. Thank you very much for listening, and if you have an old white pube text that you'd really like us to revisit, just get in touch, message us on something, or email us info@thewhitepube.com, and we will take it into consideration. We've got a few lined up that we're going to do, texts that honestly make me sweat, but they are texts that also need an exorcism, so we've just got to do it. We've got to push forward through the embarrassment and the controversy. So yeah. We will see you on the next podcast. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.